Welcome back, everybody, to another Observability Expert Insight series. And today I am your host, Christopher Bonanno, and we have our expert speaker back for our second session dealing with the AppDynamics ThousandEyes integration for seamless monitoring, Sridhar Ilinda. And we also have our expert panelist, Sai Rudravaram. So if you have questions along the way, we're going to be able to start helping you. And then we'll also have a Q&A section at the end. Just so you know, this session will be recorded. It not only gets sent out to you for those that signed up and are familiar with using the community pages and stuff. This recording will not only be on there, but it will also be going into our YouTube page along with all the rest of these Expert Insight series sessions so that you guys get the most out of it, not only, just from the one day that you're there, but also you can go back and rewatch certain parts, etc. And it's all feedback driven. So if there's anything that we missed or anything more you would like to see, let us know. We will start, creating that content or making adjustments to try to help everybody out. So let's go ahead and jump into some housekeeping items. So there will be some assumed knowledge in this. We want to try to get the most out of the one session, and your time is valuable. So we do have some assumptions. It is, first of all, assumed that you guys understand or are at least minorly familiar with Splunk AppDynamics as well, ThousandEyes. We will be having everybody muted so that everyone, if you have a question, definitely put it in the Q&A or in the chat. But at the same time, we will have a Q&A section at the end of this session. So if you have a question and you really want to get it off your chest anytime along the way, go ahead and do so in the Q&A section. If there's any feedback like, hey, your mic isn't working, the screen's too small, anything like that, let us know. And we can easily, let us know in chat, and we can easily make those adjustments along the way. And then towards the end, I'm going to try to uphold the muted mics rule, but since we have a decent sized group, if only a couple people are wanting to ask questions, there's a possibility we can take you off mute for a little bit of time. And just for sake of saying it, if anyone does come off of mute, or if anyone does have any questions, any names, affiliations, or anything like that will be removed before added to our YouTube recording. Lastly, for a disclaimer, all of this content that we create is for you guys, but it is owned and only meant for the purposes of using it with our customers, not necessarily for you to go and take it and rebrand it on your own. So that's a given, right? But we are here to help you. We want you guys to succeed. We want you guys to have fun in using the product and to get meaningful use out of it. So without further ado, I will hand the microphone over to Sridhar, and he can start taking you through today's agenda. Sri, whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris. Let me move to the agenda. All right. So as Chris mentioned, my name is Sridhar, and we are from Customer Success team. And here is the today's agenda. In today's session, first I will provide a quick recap of our first session, right, which happened like a couple of weeks before. And in that session, we talked about the overview of ThousandEyes and the deployment, or I would say the integration of that Splunk AppDynamics and ThousandEyes. So I'll give a recap of that session quickly, and then we'll talk about the exact data exchange, right, that happened between the two solutions. We will look at some of the use cases, followed by a demonstration of the data that is being exchanged, as well as we'll take a specific use case of troubleshooting a user experience problem. So without further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to provide a quick recap. If someone is joining newly, right, today's session, I just want to give a quick recap so that you can follow along. So in the first session in this series, we looked at an overview of ThousandEyes. And just to refresh your memory, ThousandEyes is a software as a service or SaaS platform that provides visibility into the performance of cloud services, SaaS applications, and mainly the internet or the network. So it's Key features include path visualization, network assurance, and outage detection across both internal as well as external networks. So we looked at various vantage points or the agents of ThousandEyes and how you can deploy those and create different tests based on your specific requirements. Next, we talked about integrating ThousandEyes and AppDynamics and the benefits of those, which is basically full end-to-end visibility to observe and monitor your employee or customer digital experience, right from the end user, up until the cloud or the data center where your applications are running. So basically trying to bridge the gap between network, application, and your operations team. So the main integration benefit is the most comprehensive, in-depth observability solution of your entire stack. So we also looked at various prerequisites in terms of licensing and other requirements. And I demoed on the actual deployment steps. So this was all that we covered in the previous session. And there is a YouTube link as well, right? If you want to go refer that in future. So let's move forward for today's session. First, I want to talk about the data exchange. So in this, I just want to give a quick overview of the data that is exchanged between both the solutions and at what point of time and what kind of data is being exchanged. So there are three areas mainly within these solutions where the data exchange happens. The first area is when you finish the integration on the ThousandEyes side and then start creating the tests. So this is the first API call that happens, and AppDynamics will send all the application data like your AppDynamics application name, the services, and the domains of the pages being monitored by the EUM, right? So when I say EUM, end user monitoring. So based on this data, ThousandEyes will recommend the tests for you to deploy. So this is the first exchange that happens, which is AppDynamics sending data to ThousandEyes on its applications, the services, as well as the domains, or I would say the pages that are getting monitored in using end user monitoring. So based on this, you actually, ThousandEyes, you can create tests. And once the tests are created, and ThousandEyes also displays AppDynamics applications, service health, and also the dependencies between services, right? So this is the second integration, or the second data exchange happens when ThousandEyes displays application service health and their dependencies. The third and final data exchange happens, in fact, the other way, where ThousandEyes will send data to AppDynamics when you're trying to view a browser. For example, you go to browser real user monitoring dashboard in AppDynamics, and that is where we display the ThousandEyes metrics, or I would say the network metrics like loss, latency, and jitter. So these are the three main core metrics data that is passed from ThousandEyes to AppD. It's basically an OTel stream that is sent, and those metrics are passed for the services that are matched between two solutions, right? So once the matching happens, or I would say the services are matched with the domains, these three metrics are shared. And I'll show these in the demo as well, right, on where to look for these metrics. But in a high level, these are the three places where the data is being exchanged, and in a high level, the data that is being exchanged. So all this translates to basically basically translates to your troubleshooting user experience problem, right? So you have both your application specific metrics that are captured by AppDynamics, as well as network specific metrics captured by ThousandEyes. You can view both of them in a single pane of glass in AppDynamics, so that if at all you need to troubleshoot an issue, you can quickly point out whether it's application or network, and then focus in that particular product. So yeah, as you can see, the network test results are embedded in the user experience workflow. And like I said, those correlations happen automatically using the application domains, and there is no manual intervention required. So as soon as you sync the tests, you will see the data in AppDynamics. And in the dashboard, you can click through or filter based on different geographic locations or depending upon the specific domain or the page that you want to review the performance, right? So you can do that as well. So that's about the data exchange that happens. Now let's look at some of the use cases of how you can use this integration. So the first is as I discussed before, it's to quickly isolate network issues affecting application performance. So as you saw in the previous dashboard, you can observe both ThousandEyes metrics, which are like loss, latency, and jitter, in the context of AppDynamics end user monitoring metrics like your end user response time. So you have both the context together, which will help you troubleshoot quickly. So you can quickly identify if the issue that users are experiencing is because of application or the network. And if it's application, you can focus your troubleshooting efforts within AppDynamics, like you go to snapshots, right? Look at the code, or you get a full call graph and drill down there, right? Or if you feel that the application or the issue is due to network, you might see a spike in like a jitter, loss, or latency, and then you can seamlessly navigate to the ThousandEyes dashboard and you start your troubleshooting there. Second use case would be like, in general, if you're an AppOps person, generally all the network related things are black box for you. So with this, right, you enable, with this integration, you enable an AppOps person to have a look at the network dependencies in ThousandEyes, right? So you don't need access to let's say a switch or a router on the on your network. You can just get access to ThousandEyes and you can have a feel of how, you can have a feel of your network performance. So yeah, you get network dependencies in ThousandEyes. You get a detailed path visualization which shows all the network paths between the selected agents and the target URL. And you can monitor network metrics, and you can do a lot of other things as well. But again, the second use case is like an AppOps person getting some visibility into the network, like an NetOps person. So third is like all synthetic, like all the tests that you have to create in ThousandEyes, it's all automated. Generally, you don't need to do the guesswork of which domain or which application or which endpoint that you want to monitor, right? Based on your application. So everything is automated for you. So as soon as you do the integration, you get a detailed list of test recommendations that you need to create in ThousandEyes so that you get that end-to-end visibility, right? And as soon as those recommendations are all automatic, and once you select the test that you want to create, even the deployment is all automated. So you don't need to, spend much time. So deploying a test in ThousandEyes is a matter of minutes. So finally, all we are trying to do here is to align the three personas, which is your AppOps, DevOps, and NetOps. So these personas can work collaboratively. They can look at the same data and talk same language, right? Which will immensely help in reducing your mean time to detect as well as mean time to resolution as well. So those are some of the use cases. So let's move, let's move forward to a demo, and then let me start sharing my screen quickly so that we can get started with the demo. So as soon as you log into, AppDynamics, I just want to quickly show on all the data or the metrics that you can see from ThousandEyes, right? So as soon as you log into AppDynamics, you go to, you go to overview page, right? You just click on user experience and the initial sync with ThousandEyes, right? So for example, at this point, it's assumed that you have enabled the integration or deployed you have enabled the integration like I've shown in the previous session. So you have enabled the integration, you created the required ThousandEyes tests, right? And then now you want to sync the data with AppDynamics. So the first step that you do is like you go to user experience, and then again, assuming the integration is enabled, the tests are created in ThousandEyes, and then you come to AppDynamics and then simply say sync with ThousandEyes. So what this does is it's basically matches the domains or the pages, the domains of the pages that are in your end user monitoring application in AppD with the domains that are getting tested in ThousandEyes, and then those metrics will be synced, right? So as of now, since this is an environment where everything is already synced once, right now there is nothing additional to sync, right? So once the sync is done, for whatever browser real user monitoring applications within AppDynamics, if there is a matching test in ThousandEyes, those are synced, right? So for example, in this case, we have two applications. These are like Brum applications in AppD. These two have a matching domain in ThousandEyes where the tests were created. So for example, you have 4 tests in ThousandEyes that match this application. You have one in this. So if you want to understand further of what those tests are, right, you can open a single application here. So double click on this. This will take you to the dashboard, and then you have a network monitoring tab, which I think was introduced as a part of this integration. So once you click on that, you can see all those 4 tests that are synced, right? When you click on that sync with ThousandEyes button. So as of now, 2 of these tests are reporting data. 2 of them are not. So as you can see, you get latency, packet loss, and jitter. So each of this is like a test within ThousandEyes that is trying to monitor an endpoint, right? In this case, for example, this is an API endpoint, or it's a payment API endpoint. So this e-commerce application is actually calling a third-party service and via an API, and that API endpoint is monitored by ThousandEyes. So we are getting latency, packet loss, and jitter. And so those are the metrics. And first time when you do the sync, these will be pulled up. And let's say if you added more tests in ThousandEyes, right? You have, you understood how things work. You want to enable more monitoring, and you created more tests in ThousandEyes. You can sync again, right? So once you sync again, those additional test details will come into AppDynamics. Similarly, for some reason, if sync doesn't happen, you also have the option to manually match the data with ThousandEyes. So right now, these 4 test data is synced. So let's say if you want to bring in more test data into this AppDynamics application, you can manually sync as well. So once you finish the sync, if you go to the AppDynamics e-commerce, or this is an application dashboard, right? So this is your end user monitoring dashboard. Here, if you notice, like there are these widget, right? So it says ThousandEyes Network Insights. So this widget will be populated with data once the sync is successful. Ideally, by default, this should show up. If it doesn't show up, you always have the option to go here and add the ThousandEyes Network Insights widget. So what we are seeing here is, again, the data for last 3 days. Maybe let me make it short, maybe 12 hours, right? So this data is for the last 12 hours. As you can see, this, if you're familiar with AppDynamics before, you know our Brum dashboard, right? We show the end user experience in terms of their end user response time performance, both real as well as synthetic, right? So if you don't want synthetic jobs, you just want to look at the real user performance, you can. So this is your end user response time and the percentiles that you have in this dashboard. You can look at different browsers that your users are using, the geography of from where they're using your application, the total page requests, right? So you have this dashboard, right? So this is all your application data of how your end user experience is. Now with this integration, what we are trying to bring here is the ThousandEyes network insights, right? So you have latency, packet loss, and jitter. So now in a single pane of glass, you can match your application performance with your network performance, right? So you can view both of them together. So this will immensely help in your troubleshooting. So if the issue is application or if the issue is network, you can quickly troubleshoot. So having said that, right, I want to take through a troubleshooting scenario, right? How you troubleshoot. But before going there, like again, I just want to show you the metrics, right? So these are the 3 metrics. You can click on view tests. So those the tests that we synced, like the 4 test data is coming in. You can always navigate to ThousandEyes tests from here specifically. You have a couple of filtering options. The first filter is based on the tests, right? If you want to concentrate on only the API, the payment API, you can simply click on that. The data will be refreshed. So you can filter by tests. Similarly, also you can filter by locations. So these locations are the ThousandEyes agents, right, that are testing these domains or these endpoints. So you have a couple of filtering options available as well. But this data is from ThousandEyes. Now, let me go through a troubleshooting scenario, right? Or I would say like a troubleshooting use case where on how you look at the data of both the solutions and how they will help you. So let's say if user calls in and say, hey, my payments are taking time, right? I'm not able to make a payment. If this is like an e-commerce website where customer goes and purchase products and they're not able to make a payment, right? So this is a big impact. So what you can do as a starting point is, yes, come to the browser user, like, come to this dashboard where you actually monitor that application from an end user perspective, like you have instrumented AppDynamics. So you can see, right, there are spikes happening occasionally, and users are also complaining issues about payment. So what you can do is you can go to, let's say, you don't know whether it's an application or network, right? So first we start with users, like the payment page. So you go to pages and AJAX requests, and assuming the payment transaction is what is causing your issues, right? So you can double click on that, and this will take you to the specific dashboard of your payment transaction, right? So you have your end user response time. There is a timing breakdown here. This breakdown clearly defines like where most of the time is spent, right? Whether on the browser side or in the backend side of the applications. So you can scroll down also, you can find, right? So this is your end user response time. There is a spike between 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. So you can scroll down, and mostly you can see whenever your end user response spike happens, at the same time, like it happens whenever there is an increase in the server time. So here in this case, server time is basically stuff that is happening in your application side, right? So if there is a browser issue, then you could always look at, the different connect, right? It's all flat, so there is no issue on the browser. We know the response available time on the browser side increased. It's because the application has having a problem, right? So we at least know, okay, it's nothing to do with browser. Now it's an application. So in order to further troubleshoot, right, what we do is like we can zero in on this time and take pick couple of browser snapshots and then start looking at the data. So let's say if you want to pick a specific snapshot, we can, but since it's a server, we know it's something on the application side, right? So you go to the APM, right? So directly you can from here. So the front end payment page is mapped to the backend or the server fetch payment info business transaction. So you can directly go there, and this is your APM data, right? So we know there is a spike that happened. So let's go and analyze some of the snapshots. So for example, you can order it, right? You can always order and then double click on a single snapshot, right? Just to look at what is causing that spike. So in this case, the payment page took about 2.3 seconds, and then you can drill down further and then identify, you can go to the code level, right? And then see what is taking time, right? So in this case, there are a couple of API calls, especially this one took 56%, right? Which is HTTP call. You can click on that and then identify then, hey, my payments are slow is because my third-party service that I call for my payments is taking 56% of my time, right? So now this is a third-party provider. We don't know, we don't own that infrastructure, or we don't know that application, right? So, at this point of time, all we have to do is call the third-party person and or our service provider and then say, hey, something is going on wrong, right? So, then they will start their troubleshooting. Instead of that, right? If we can give further more information, right? We can at least point to a particular problem within their network. That will be even more awesome, correct? So what we do is like currently the same third-party endpoint, we are also monitoring using ThousandEyes. So if I close this out, come back to the browser dashboard earlier, right? Go back to our user experience and open the application. And then let's look at since we are monitoring that third-party service using ThousandEyes too, we can look at network metrics, correct? So if you look at the tests, there are these tests, right? And one of the API that we are monitoring or the service provider call is this. So if you want, we can click on this filter, right? We can simply click on that. And if you observe the data, right, like there has been, ups and downs of your latency. So again, I'm trying to look at the data for this particular endpoint across all locations, right? And if you keenly observe, there are a couple of alerts also. So these orange lines that you see, these are the alerts from ThousandEyes that something is happening in this particular call, right? Because our network latency increased. And these are alerts that you can also see in AppDynamics from ThousandEyes. So if you want to troubleshoot this further, what we can do is we can launch ThousandEyes from here or for this specific test, and then look at the ThousandEyes data, right? To understand why there is a spike on the latency. So you can simply go here, click on this, and that should take you to the ThousandEyes test run, right? So what you are seeing here is basically a ThousandEyes test that is running against that endpoint, right? So as you know, like this is api.payment demolabs.net. So this is the endpoint. This ThousandEyes test is running, and in order to run this test, like we are running from different locations, right? One in England, one in San Francisco, one in Tokyo. So that again, this application users are worldwide, right? So we pick few locations from which this test runs. Okay, so you see there is a loss. Like again, what we are trying to look here is a metrics loss. So this is based on agent to server test. So instead of, in addition to loss, let's say you want to monitor latency too, right? Because that is the spike that we saw. So as you can see, occasionally there is a latency spike happening. So this is again from this test is going to that service provider, right? So there is a latency spike within the network. And if you want to zero in for the right, you can simply zoom in, right? And that should take you to the specific data. As you know, at this time, there is no issue, right? This time the issues popped up. So you can always filter on different times. Again, by looking at the data, this test is running every 5 minutes. So we are trying to hit this endpoint every 5 minutes from these agents and then monitor the network performance, right? And this is like an agent to server test. So the metrics that we get is your network latency, loss, and jitter. And right now we are looking at latency. So if you see, like we have a path visualization, which is basically how your network packets are traversing from your agent to your target, right? Again, target in this case is your third-party service provider's API. So path visualization will give you network hop by hop on how your packets are transferring or traversing. So you can also click on tables, right? So this should give you like in a tabular way, what is my packet loss, latency, and jitter. So if you keenly observe when there is no issue, right? Like when there is no issue, everything looks fine. Maybe London has a little latency, but every other location looks fine. And if you drag to the time when this issue happens, the latency is from your US agents, right? Drastically increased, right? So the London stayed same, right? But if you look at the North Virginia and San Francisco, both east and west, your latency spike is there. So if you see before the spike, the latency was about 70 milliseconds, but during the spike, it is constantly happening. So at least we could zero in saying, hey, this is happening only for US users, right? Or the tests that are running in US only. So in order to troubleshoot further, let's look at path visualization. And maybe if you want, we can just filter on one of the agent, like let's say San Francisco, right, where we are seeing this issue, and compare the path visualization before and after, right? So this is the time when things are normal. So as you can see, everything is green. So you have the agent here, the network packs are sent, and it is trying to hit the Amazon surveys. I think this particular service provider has their applications in Amazon, and ThousandEyes is clearly telling that the service is running in Amazon EC2, and you are trying to hit US East region, right? So the latency is all good. Like you can hover over to this agent and see the latency is about 70 milliseconds, right? Not bad. Everything is green. But when this issue happened, as you see, there is a red here. That means there is a link delay. And also if you go to the Amazon, like the provider, or I would say the target URL, it's trying to hit Singapore, right? So that looks to be an issue, right? Like you don't want an agent sitting in San Francisco hitting an EC2 instance that is in Amazon Southeast region, right? AP Southeast, which is in Singapore. So yeah, I mean, then that should be the issue here, right? So if you, let's say if I remove all this agent, yeah, if I remove San Francisco, right? So when there is an issue, when there is no issue, right? When there is no issue, you have your London, Tokyo agents, which are like in Europe and Asia, and trying to hit your Amazon instances in Singapore, which is what they are supposed to do. Your San Francisco is hitting your EC2 in US East region, which is good. So things are all fine. But when the issue is happening, all the agents try to talk to Singapore, right? So there is some problem within the service provider's network. It could be a DNS issue, or it could be, like a router issue, right? Something happened, and that's why the path changed. So this way, with this knowledge, right, we can involve the service provider and let them investigate this issue. If you want, we can also share a snapshot from ThousandEyes. There is a snapshot facility where you can share a snapshot, and you don't need to access. I mean, you don't need to have ThousandEyes access to view a snapshot. So you can share this snapshot to them, show them that an agent on US is hitting your Amazon's, in Amazon instance in Southeast, which is what is called, it's causing the latency on the network packets, which is what affecting my users as well, right at the end. So this is how you can troubleshoot an issue using AppDynamics. Like start with AppDynamics, look at like what users are complaining about which page, identify whether it is browser or an application. Once it goes to an application, is it anything within the application or the network, right? Now we zeroed in on the network. We went to ThousandEyes, look at the test data, identify different locations, zeroed on a specific US location where the issue is happening. We looked at the path visualization. There's a link delay, all because the network packets from US are trying to reach EC2 instance in Singapore, right? So again, this way, like service provider cannot deny that there is an issue. There isn't anything going on their end, right? So that's one way of troubleshooting. Like the other way is the other integration that we talked about initially when in the initial session, right? So the other integration that I discussed is about alert integration. So if you go back to the e-commerce application, this time I'm trying to open this in our APM, right, not Brum. So maybe look at last 6 hours of data, right? So this is the other way, right? I mean, again, since this is a test application, we have a lot of events that we generate. But typically, if you enabled the alerting integration where you send ThousandEyes alerts to AppDynamics, those all will show up like a custom event. So if you want to start your troubleshooting, hey, if you see some custom events here, you can start there too, right? So you can click on these custom events, and these are all the alerts. So this is like a custom event or an alert that ThousandEyes is sending to AppDynamics whenever the same payment API endpoint is having an issue. So either users can report it, or you can proactively monitor before users report it, all the events that happen in your application. Open that particular event. This is ThousandEyes because the summary says that. And if you go to the comment section, you will understand exactly what ThousandEyes test that is, what kind of endpoint it is trying to hit, what is the exact alert role, how many agents. So you get all the information of this particular event. And if you click view in ThousandEyes, it will simply take you to the screen we were in previously, right? So that's the other approach where you can look at your events and then navigate to ThousandEyes when you know the event or alert is happening from ThousandEyes. So that's the other troubleshooting workflow that you can use. So yeah, I mean, this is in a high level of all the metrics that you can view in AppDynamics, identify, troubleshoot, which will help troubleshooting. Within ThousandEyes, there is also something called dependent applications. So this is basically viewing application health in ThousandEyes, right? So again, this application is our e-commerce. There is ThousandEyes displays the application health. which is currently there is problems. That's why it says needs attention. You look at various service dependencies. Again, this is similar to flow map. In ThousandEyes, you can look at how this endpoint, which applications are calling it, and how they're dependent on each other. Like AppDynamics, you can also navigate to, like how you can navigate from AppD to ThousandEyes. If you want, you can start your troubleshooting from ThousandEyes and then navigate to AppDynamics, right? So if you click on View in AppDynamics, it will take you to the specific dashboard where this, or I would say specific flow map for this endpoint. So this information also is viewable. So you can view your application health and service dependencies in ThousandEyes too. So yeah, and that's all about this demo. I just want to touch a couple of more things on the dashboarding perspective. So if you want, right, if you want to add like ThousandEyes metrics to an AppDynamics dashboard, you can always do. Again, I'm talking about custom dashboards, not the inbuilt ones. So if you go to dashboards and reports, especially ThousandEyes metrics can be added to a Dash Studio natively, right? So again, in our previous versions, when you go to dashboard, you can add a iframe of ThousandEyes, like copy the iframe and link it as an iframe. But if you go like Dash Studio, you can natively add the metrics, right? So what that I mean is, like, when you create a dashboard, you can add a specific widget and go to ThousandEyes data. So for example, this is a dashboard that is I already previously. So you have your business indicators, which is your business IQ from AppD, your application performance indicators, and then you can add network performance metrics too. So this data in here, right, this is from the ThousandEyes. So again, we have a widget, and when you add a widget, the data source can be ThousandEyes, and then all the test data that we saw in ThousandEyes can be added to AppDynamics. And the good thing here is, in the same widget, you can add an application response time as well as network latency or jitter. And in the same widget, you can visualize both application and network metrics together. So this is possible using AppDynamics Dash Studio. Similarly, if you want to add application health or application service health to a ThousandEyes dashboard, you can do that as well. So you can go to dashboards, and then this is like a ThousandEyes dashboard. Here you can add an application service health. This is basically all your remote services that are triggered from this application, but you can add those. I mean, you can add a specific widget for your application health as well in ThousandEyes, and then you can look at the network metrics and packet loss or whatnot, right? I mean, you can do a lot here too. But yeah, I mean, I just want to communicate that using dashboards on either of the tools, you can get meaningful data as well as add this to, let's say, network command center, right? And keep monitoring these metrics. So yeah, I mean, that's all I have for today's demo. Let me pass it back to Chris and continue our session.
Awesome session. There was a lot of really good information. We saw, where we can utilize, different parts of both products in one another's viewings. That is really cool. We're going to be, especially, coming from an SRE or either a network engineer. I mean, there's a lot of value there depending on where you're looking at this from and the priorities you have in your observability monitoring. So nicely done, Shri. Now, with all of that information, I just wanted to take some time for a Q&A. So now, in your journey with observability and Cisco powering you on that journey, you have a lot of options. You have thank you. One moment. Thank you. Very good information. I appreciate that. Shri, you got a compliment? So as I was saying, I'm sorry, do you want to say anything, Shri?
No, thank you for that.
So with Cisco powering your observability journey, there are a lot of products. Now, not only just with Splunk and now AppDynamics getting added to that toolbox and their suite of tools, there's also ThousandEyes, there's Secure App. There's a lot of different tools, a lot of different products that Cisco has and promotes, and they are a part of data center building, networking, AI infrastructure. I mean, just the list goes on and on. Cisco has been around, since the internet was born. So if you have any need or wanting to build your resume, get some badges, or just familiarize with things that you're using every day and maybe want more, standard education where you might have an instructor or you might have self-paced learning, things like that. Whichever one you're going after, definitely check out Cisco University. It's the u.cisco.com. There's a lot of really good information there for those of you that are already customers or people that are thinking about becoming customers. And then I think if you're already a customer, I'm pretty sure you get all the self-paced courses or a lot of them for free, in addition to what you're seeing on our YouTube page, which, let me get to the next slide here. So if you haven't already checked this out, go to youtube.com/@Cisco Observability. We have a lot of really good videos on there, whether it's a long video or a short video. Feel free to leave comments, subscribe, like, help us out. Let us know what you're wanting to learn, what you're doing in your organization that you could use some more support for. There's also the ability to get one of us customer success engineers or customer success specialists to join a call with you if you fill in a call a consultant form, or if you contact your account team if you're already a customer and needing some extra help, or needing some extra, maybe some sort of a working session. We've got your back, so reach out. And otherwise, great job, Sri, great job, Sai, for giving us good information in the chat. And let's go ahead and start closing up for today. Thank you all for joining. We really appreciate your time, your feedback, your engagement, and stay tuned for the next one. Take care, all.